So a few weeks ago, on a Saturday, Kathy and I came downtown for an event. It was a memorial service at a venue down here, and we were early, so I said, well, let's drive around a little bit. We needed to be fashionably late, right? So I think we must have come up Broad Street because I saw a group on the West State House lawn, as is common and is good that we do that, people can do that safely in this country. And I noticed an American flag, and I said, oh, let's go around the block and see who that is. And as we're driving around the block, I said, it's a conservative group. And lo and behold, it was a group protesting what's called the teaching of critical race theory, which is a whole other sermon, but it was a conservative group. And I realized that I had associated the flag of our country with people who are conservative. And I realized I've been doing that for a long time. And that bothered me. I love this country. And so why am I not part of displaying the flag? By my choice. Nobody's told me I can't. So that just got my brain going about the state and about our church and about what we as Christians need to do. And I remembered this quote attributed to Abraham Lincoln when asked during the Civil War, is God on our side? His response was, sir, my concern is not whether God is on our side. My greatest concern is to be on God's side, for God is always right. So I really like that. And it made me think more about the role of church and state. And when I looked at the readings for today, I thought, this is fantastic. This reading from the 5th chapter of 2 Samuel and the 6th chapter of the Gospel of Mark really show two different versions of God's kingdom. So in 2 Samuel, if you just remember the history, I think we've been reading it since Trinity Sunday. The people of Israel, they were a loose community, and when there were any sort of dispute, they had judges. And they'd go to the judge, and the judge would say, well, the fair thing to do in this situation is whatever. But then the people saw everybody around them had kings, so they went to Samuel, kind of the lead judge and prophet, and said, we really want a king. And Samuel didn't think it was a good idea, but talked to God, and God appointed Saul the first king, and we read that a few weeks ago. So that's kind of the history. And then in today's reading, we hear about David as king. He's finally achieved his reign. A reading earlier this week, 40 years of reign. So we've gone from judges to a kingdom, and it was a kingdom that had royalty and had people in charge. Everything went through the government, more bureaucracy, which is typical of governments. And David began to build Jerusalem, and Jerusalem, once Solomon built the temple, became the symbol of Jewish history and tradition. Still is. Well over 2,000 years ago from that time of David. It's the symbol of the history and tradition. And if you think about our capital, and probably most countries' capitals that have been around a while, Washington, D.C. is a symbol of our history and tradition. We have the seat of government there. We have the Smithsonian Institute with museums from natural history to space to black history to the Holocaust. We have memorials like the Vietnam War Memorial and the Washington Monument. So Washington, D.C. is a symbol of our history and tradition as a country. Now, as things flow, and as our history continually tells us, and we need to remember this as a country as well, David's kingdom didn't last. Different things happened. The Babylonians came in. The kingdom failed. But there was a promise in Isaiah from God that the kingdom would return. And it would be from a descendant from David, so that the royalty lineage was maintained. That was a promise from God. And that so it had to come out of Bethlehem, from whence David came. And so God had set up this initial kingdom with David, and all the good things that came with that. And then we get Jesus born in Bethlehem, and we know the story: born in a manger, born in a cow's feeding trough, as this meek, poor child in an itinerant family. And if we think about the whole story of Holy Week, everybody's ready for the king. They're ready for the return of David. And this guy rides in on a donkey, right? So Jesus is somehow different from David, right? And that's where this story, this gospel from the 6th chapter of Mark comes in. Now, I can't think of a specific reading, but I got to believe this. Remember, David was a shepherd's son. He was the 7th son. He was the last one presented to Samuel for God to anoint as king. A ruddy, handsome boy, I think they called him. So I'm thinking David was pretty popular in his hometown once he became king. I'm thinking people are saying, yeah, that's our dude. And Jesus goes home and begins to live into the kingship, the leadership role that God has given Jesus. And he's kind of run out of town. Who is this guy? He's the son of a carpenter. And carpenters in that time weren't fine finished carpenters doing great cabinetry. That was a lower level job. And that's who Jesus was. So he has a different reception in his hometown, but this is the king that God has appointed. And it's a totally different story. Think of the parables of the kingdom of heaven that are in Matthew chapter 18. The kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed. The kingdom of heaven is like a pearl, a treasure buried in a field. Consider the lilies of the field. This is the kingdom that God presented to the people when he returned the reign of David. Now, whether God changed God's mind or this was God's plan all along, I don't know and I won't know. But the final presentation from God to us of kingdom is the kingdom of heaven. It's not about governments. It's not about flags. It's not about temples. It's about God's love. So what does Jesus do? Where's this example in this gospel about what God's love looks like? He sends out, after getting rejected, he sends out the disciples, 2 by 2, and gives them these instructions. When you enter a house, bless it. If they don't want to hear what you have to say, dust off your feet, not so much in rejection, but move on. Find someone who wants to hear what you have to say. And when you go out as missionaries, bring healing, peace, and the good news. The good news of God's love. So this whole thing about, and adopt to the culture, because that's why he says, shake off your feet and move on. If people aren't ready to hear the words you have to share, adapt to their culture and move on. Now, so often in the history of missionaries, particularly, since the discovery of the New World, it's been more about get conversions. And I'm not hearing that on what Jesus says. He just tell people the good news. If they can't hear it, move on, and always bring healing and peace. So I'm not anti-government. I obey the law. I believe in our government. I believe that at its foundation we have a very good structure for government. Like I said, there might be people on the west lawn of the State House right now promoting their agenda safely and freely. And I know there aren't very many other countries in this world where that can happen. From the far radical left to the far radical right, you can go to the places like our State House and state your opinion. And so I want you to know that I'm not anti-government. I think at its base we have a very good government. But I also think that's not my guiding light. The flag isn't the most important thing to me. The cross is. There's one right there. The cross is the most important thing to me and what Jesus' love represents. So I think this leads me to saying you as Trinity Church have a very unique opportunity right now. You've had almost 24 years of a loved rector who moved on. As you knew when he got here, he was going to move on sometime, right? But now you have this chance to imagine and reimagine who you are. You have a mission statement. I pulled this off the website, so I hope it's right. And this time to imagine or reimagine is to say that's our mission, or to rethink this mission. Work with the interim priest in charge and rethink the mission if that's appropriate. But right now, the mission statement is this: Trinity is a community of people responding to God's abundant goodness in the world. It's our desire to make God's message of love known. Trinity seeks to follow the model of Jesus. All are welcome. And in my time here, the 13 months I've been here, I've seen that continually. So you have a chance to live into that or change it. What is God calling? Is there some different call that God has for you now? Some know, the vestry knows, and I'm not sure how public this is, but Trinity is going to receive a very large financial gift. I think is it the developer that way, Stacy? Mr. Edwards? I don't know the whole history, and someone else can tell you, but he wants to be a good neighbor. He's kind of disrupting our flow right now on Lozelle Street there, so he wants to be a good neighbor, and he's making this contribution. And frankly, there's some financial problems in this church. It gives you breathing room. It gives you a chance to live into this reimagination or imagination, to work with Father Applegate, to have him help you do that reimagining. But as you do this, and here we are, we have this beautiful old building. There's a persistent water leak over there. There's the fence out front needs to be fixed. And if we go to Bob Wicks, the list is much longer than that. And I'm not saying don't fix those things. I'm not saying fix them, but I'm saying as you consider what to do, remember your mission. As you do these things, are you living into your mission? Are you bringing healing, peace, and good news? Now, that's where buildings are important. I'm a building engineer, right? And if part of bringing the good news is having a venue to do that, then it has to be maintained. So I'm not against maintaining the building either. But I am just challenging you to think about the mission and all the decisions. You have all these decisions coming up over the next 2 years or so about your direction, about your next priest, about who you want, what you want in your next priest. So keep the mission in front. You have breathing room, you have time, you can reimagine yourselves and imagine yourselves. Trinity is a community of people responding to God's abundant goodness in the world. It's our desire to make known God's message of love. Trinity seeks to follow the model of Jesus. All are welcome.